So this question of why do I hold back in social situations, I can't tell you how much that used to apply to me. And the reason why I wanted to, or what's coming up for me around this is I used to come at this from a place of I have to say the right thing. I have to be funny. I have to remember the jokes. I have to say the correct thing, or I have to behave in a certain way. Now, behavior and changing behavior, or something that you can label as behaviorism, is a legitimate form of therapy if we want to use that lens. But it's also something which can be quite limiting because it doesn't get the whole picture of what we need to do to change. So if we have the problem that we always feel like we're holding back, usually in groups I've seen it, not necessarily one-on-one when you're comfortable around a person, but when it's like in a really overwhelming group setting or a really overwhelming party situation, there's this issue that comes up. And we can change our behaviors to like take up more space, or we can change our behaviors to look people in the eye, or to just expose ourselves, and just through exposure therapy we lose that. And that can work. And I would say a big part of my journey that was very healing for me was going into social situations that I was intimidated by over and over again, thousands of times. That was very healing for me. But it doesn't get to the place that we necessarily want to get. Because what I saw in my journey, and also people who you have done the same, so clients who have done the same, who've been through a similar kind of journey, for them it was, and for me as well, it was for like pickup and social freedom, all that kind of stuff, right? Is what it does is it makes you more competent, it makes you more confident, but it builds around, or it builds on top of the insecurity or the framework of viewing life that led you to have this problem to begin with. So rather than actually getting rid of the weeds, we've now planted seeds, we have foragers, we have gardeners, we have like a whole system which keeps the weeds under wraps, right? But the weeds are still there. The roots are still there. They keep on popping up. We just keep pruning them. And that can be very effective. And that's why behaviorism and changing behavior is still a big part of my coaching and also my own work, like just going up and showing up, doing the hard thing, path of most resistance, all of that kind of thing is still very relevant. But it doesn't get to the root of the problem. And the root of the problem most of the time is uncomfortability. Uncomfortability developed by unconscious insecurities. It could be specifically around groups can be the trigger. It can be in loud, chaotic environments. It can just be loud environments. It can be social situations in general. It can be situations where we don't feel like we have a big competency as well. And there's so many different ways, but in some way, shape or form, an insecurity is making us not feel comfortable, okay? And when this is the case, when we're not feeling comfortable, behaviors can make us be more comfortable because they take away the innocence of the situation. Innocence, how you can think of innocence, is just basically experience with the issue, okay? And if you're more experienced, then it means that you don't have innocence around something, which means that you can be more competent, you can appear more comfortable. But if the issue isn't innocence, if the issue is insecurity, if it is a part that's self-sabotaging, if it is a way which we're disowning the world, then that's something that has to be solved differently. So a story from my kind of past is that when I was doing this stuff, I was just getting into the unconscious work too, and it's still a big framework that I use now, but I didn't have the full framework. And when I started implementing it, it had a lot of benefits, like I was able to not engage in so much like mental processing around an issue, or I was able to not feed into insecurity as much, and some insecurities even cleaned up. But the core of the issue, which was me feeling like I had to always do something, I had to always prove something, I had to always be something and demonstrate that all the time, that remained unchanged. So the maturity of that issue increased. It went from not being able to even really say hello in a confident manner, to being able to do that. But now in conversation I was acting a little bit weird, to now in conversation I wasn't acting weird, but when I spent long enough time around whatever person I was talking to, just certain things would come out. So the maturity of each stage got better, but the issue remained. And the way that that issue got liberated was actually looking at, how is it that I came to that conclusion? How is it that this thing became the way it was? How is it, right? Once you realize that this is not something that you were born with, this is not something that is genetically predetermined, this is not something which is just the fact of life and you have to work around it, right? The same thing with the garden example. Weeds, they are a fact of life in the sense that there are just weeds in the world, but it's not a fact of life that if they're in your garden, that's it. Like that garden's finished. No, you can do something about it, okay? And the way that you do something about it, which is why I made my free product, is that you get to the heart of the issue. You don't stay around at surface level symptoms. You don't stay around at just looking at the triggers. That can be helpful, but triggers, you can't control what triggers come up, really. Like you can't, because you don't have control of the external world and triggers are external. You can't even really control your mind. Well, I don't know why I said it like that. You actually can't control your mind. You can't stop thinking. You can direct it, but you're not actually in full control of your mind. You have to get to the root of how this began. And then once you get to that root, you have to know what's active. Is it an ego state? Is it a projection? Is it an introjection? Is it any of those things? Because once you heal that, once I healed that in my journey, I stopped feeling like I had to meet a certain criteria, like I had to be a certain kind of person. The sun is setting right now, so it's quite nice. I had to meet a certain criteria in order to be good enough. That stopped happening. And when that stopped happening, all of the individual behaviors that I was trying to manage, that I was trying to control, that I was trying to be, all of that dropped off naturally. So it took a little bit longer, right? That's the funny thing. It took a little bit longer because when you're getting to the heart of the issue, there's more weeds you have to go through. There's more leaves you have to trim. There's more just stuff you have to sit through. And that can actually be more painful. That's the other funny thing that stops people from doing this, other than just not having the knowledge. The other thing it can do is it can be more confronting because you have to kind of be in the pain a lot more. Doesn't mean that we add to the pain or embrace the pain or we have to be like no pain, no gain, although I do kind of like those things, right? It doesn't have to be like that. What it can be instead is we say, okay, let's actually stay in the pocket. Let's stay in the pocket. Let's make sure that we get what needs to be done here. And then once you have that mindset and you kind of realize that pain is just pain, there's no suffering that has to come from it, then you can stay and you can see where is this coming from. And it takes longer. It can be more painful. It doesn't necessarily have to be more painful, but it can be more painful. And then what happens is that dozens or so shadows that are linked, insecurities that are linked, they just drop off. So how that looked like for me is I went from constantly always having to manage myself. This was the other annoying thing about it with behaviorism. You always have to manage yourself. And I had to manage a lot of things. I had so many just strange kind of impulses to make an edgy joke or go a little bit too overboard or be a little bit too aggressive. All from a very loving place. It just came from insecurity. But obviously once I didn't have that insecurity anymore, then that needs to constantly manage. That needs to constantly manage my perception or be someone that I wasn't, or always have to kind of check myself to see if I was doing the right thing, just faded away. So that in this area of life, at least, being in social situations, the issue, I don't get nervous in social situations anymore. I don't get in my head. I don't get stifled. That's not from doing the correct behavior, although that helped. Doing the correct behavior helped because it got rid of innocence. It taught you a lot of things. It taught you to face your fears. It taught you to get over social anxiety. It teaches you a ton of stuff, but it doesn't have the transformation which I just described, where now in social interactions, 99.9% of the time out of 100, I do not get bothered at it. Not like I don't care, I push it down and I pretend not to care. Like the impulse to actually, that precedes getting socially stifled, does not even arise anymore. Okay? That's the level of depth that you can go to. Anything else is settling. That's why I made my free product, to make sure that people have that access to do that. You know, and obviously with the one-on-one work, goes way deeper, way more bespoke, all of that kind of good stuff. But the product gets you there. Gets you there where you need to go, at least from where the stages where most people who are watching this right now will be. So that's some thoughts. I guess the last parts of that is also realizing that, like I said, going out, facing your fears, doing a bit of behaviorism, making sure you get out there, show up, do the path of most resistance, all of that kind of good stuff. Damn, that sun is shining in my eyes, but it's a great view. That stuff is valuable, but it does not overtake, it doesn't precede the emotional work, okay? It doesn't precede any of that. It shouldn't. Because once you do the internal work, everything else kind of falls into place. Now, here's the thing. Sometimes people have just done internal work and then they still get stifled socially, right? That's because there's innocence there. That's because there's not actually experience. That's like saying, oh, like I've done the internal work, therefore I shouldn't be nervous when I compete in an Olympic sport trying to get gold when I haven't done any training for it. No, it's because you haven't done the work. So you shouldn't be doing it, right? You shouldn't be winning. You should not be confident. Like, how could you be confident to do something which you haven't put the work in? And I can tell you right now, that is something which, you know, there's no reason why you can't be as confident as you can be, but confident that you're going to win would just be delusional, right? So there still needs to be an innocence. There still needs to be a showing up practice. There still needs to be a path of most resistance. That's my thoughts on it. I'll link the videos which are relevant to this, because it's probably going to be the path of most resistance of one other video. Let me know if that's helpful, and I will catch you on the next one.